Welcome, everybody. We are glad you're here for today's roundtable discussion in a virtual way. Man, I'm thankful for technology and the ability to be able to continue to connect with friends and ministry co-laborers, even though we're so far apart from one another. Hello to each and every one of you who were able to be at the San Antonio members event. And for those who were able to come to Tampa in the South and Chicago in the Midwest, I feel like I just saw so many of you, and man, what a refreshing time that was. So thank you, of course, for coming to that. We have so much to look forward to as a network with the LGBTQ virtual webinar that's coming up, of course, and then Idea Night in August. And then, of course, the big summit coming up here in January, February of 2023. One of our exciting announcements just came live is Dr. Tony Evans going to be speaking for us, keynoting for the Summit 2023. I know a lot of you all insiders knew that information long before everybody else, but a lot of people getting excited about that. One of our early keynotes as the Idea Network began was Kerry Schmidt. We love Kerry around here. Jason and I were talking before Kerry jumped on. He is a crowd pleaser with our group. We read your books, brother. We love you. We appreciate you, and we follow you tremendously. And we're so thankful to have you as a leader, not only in this network, but in many networks. And so we're grateful for that. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I've done my part to welcome everybody. That's what I do now. I welcome. And now I turn it over to Jeremy, who is the Vice President of Initiatives of the Idea Network. We are thankful for Jeremy's leadership. Jeremy, take it away.
Hey guys, good to see you today. I too want to thank you for all of the hard work that went into Idea Day, getting there, the finances that it cost you to get there. And I hope that it was a great blessing and a help to you and your ministry. And it was good to see so many of you there as well. Let's jump right into it today. And I'm really, really anxious to hear the help that Kerry's going to give to us. Adam, my screen just changed. Adam, you were the first face that we saw in at least the first person to show us their face today. Everyone else is just showing us names. Would you pray for us? Ask the Lord to bless our time together, and we'll get started.
Yes. Lord, I thank you so much for this time that we can gather together and hear some wisdom that we can use to apply in our lives and ministries. Thank you for a wonderful couple weeks of Idea Days that I know were a huge help to me and to so many other people in this network. Pray that you'll just use this time to be an encouragement and help to each one of us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Adam. All right. We are excited to have Kerry Schmidt with us today. I've known Brother Schmidt since I was a freshman in college. And like Josh said, he's a friend of the network. He is a crowd favorite, and we're glad to have him with us today. I'm going to turn it over to him to share his talk. Before I do, Brother Schmidt has written books for years, and I know through Striving Together, you guys, a lot of us on here have read a lot of those books. This is the newest one that I've got. I don't know if this is your newest book or if you're coming out with anything new, but I've just started reading this one recently, Stop Trying. You can get it from Moody Publishers. You can get it on Amazon, wherever books are sold. So I did want to plug this book that I'm enjoying right now. But Brother Schmidt, we are so honored to have you with us today. I'm going to kick it to you, and we're glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you guys. It's great to see you, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm shocked that I get invited to do this. I think I'm probably just the guy that preached too long at the summit in 2021 or 2020, whatever year it was. So anyway, I'll try to recoup a little of that time right now. How's that? And I won't sing a single Disney song. So love you guys and love what you're doing and thankful for you all. I love the topic that I was assigned today. It's kind of two-pronged. One is cultivating your core, and the other is checking your motives. And at first glance, you might be like, well, what does that have to do? It's almost like two topics, but it's really not, because often what is wrong with our core is motivational in nature. In other words, if your motives, let me say it this way, if you get to a bad place in ministry, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, we all get there sometimes. Often, one of the key contributors to why we are there is motivational. It's that we're being driven at the core by something that's toxic. And maybe we don't even see it as toxic in the way it's taken place in our lives. So when I think of cultivating the core, now that's kind of a nebulous idea, but I'm thinking spiritual, psychological, and emotional wholeness and health, and maybe it's a cliche word, but it's also a Bible word, flourishing. I'm thinking of someone who's not pretending to have joy or pretending to have energy or pretending to have vision, but someone that is really, really experiencing it. Okay, so why is this so critical? Because Proverbs, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I cannot help but bring my true self to ministry environments, even if I'm trying to fake and cover up what my true self is. So if I'm not really growing in grace, if I'm not really truthfully, factually, substantively experiencing the gospel, if I'm not really enjoying my walk, my relationship with Jesus, if my marriage isn't operating in wholeness, now I'm not saying that any of this is perfect ever, and all of us struggle in all these areas, but I'm saying as a general quality, if my marriage is not healthy, if my heart and spirit are not healthy, if my emotions and my psychology, what's my thought world, where my head is, if it's not in a good, healthy place, then that is going to, number one, really be destructive to me. But because I'm a leader, because I'm a pastor and shepherd, I can't help but impact others. And even if I'm trying to fake a biblical impact on the surface, it's only going to be a very thin veneer, because I'm going to be bringing a toxic soul or an unhealthy soul or an unhealthy family life to the ministry context. So it's just going to be an experience in futility. The ministry is not going to go where I hope it will go or be what I hope it will be. I'm not going to enjoy it. It's going to be hard work to fake it. And people are going to buy the lie, but then eventually it's just going to come crashing down. And then they're going to be disappointed and devastated. And it's just going to create destruction. Okay. So in my mind, guys, ministry is core. It's nothing if it isn't most essentially the core of my life. Just to give you an example or an illustration, some people try to parse out, their personal walk from their sermon preparation. And to the degree that, you're talking about just transcribing your sermon outline or your manuscript, I understand that. But there's no way I can separate my personal walk with the Lord, the fountain of spiritual health in my life, and what I'm teaching or preaching on Sunday. They integrate. They're wholly integrated, except for the mechanics of coming up with an outline. Everything else, I have got to speak out of the overflow of my own experience of Jesus, my own experience of the gospel. And if I try to do ministry that is not out of that source, it is as dry and barren and unfulfilling an experience as anybody can have in life. So I guess my foundational thought here is cultivate your core at any and all costs. Like, this has got to be your priority for your own sake, for your marriage, for your family's sake, and for the sake of your accountability to Christ. It is not worth faking it. It is not worth pretending to believe in, love, and walk with Jesus so that you can appear to be a pastor, so that you can have the acknowledgement or the title or the external perks or whatever your psyche has perceived to be the benefits of ministry and pastoring. It's got to come from the core. So I've opened my Bible to Psalm 39. You may or may not want to join me there. I've been meditating on this psalm the last couple of weeks. And when COVID started, I started to do a simple daily devotion with our church family, and we were just going through Psalms. We just slow walk through Psalms. It's been very healthy for me to do this. If not a single human being watched the devotions and mostly it's some senior saints in my church that do. But if not anybody else did, the discipline of me putting my head into Psalms and going alone with David as he walked with God has been incredibly powerful in my life, because by and large, and I realize there's a wide diversity of Psalms, but a huge portion of the Psalms are private individuals, especially David, cultivating his core. It's raw, it's brutal, it's honest, it's open. It's the expression of every kind of human emotion you can imagine, every kind of elation and celebration on one hand, every kind of depression and darkness of soul on the other. And Psalm 39 is David, it's one of the darker Psalms. And I like to really meditate on these because I don't know about you, but I have some dark days. I have some times where my soul, for whatever reason, enters into some dark places. I'm not talking about suicidal or something that would need medical diagnosis, but just, the day in, day out, the spiritual battle it wears on us, depletion. And the answer in Psalms every time was the psalmist, number one, going to God. Okay, that's number one. And then in the presence of God, objectively differentiating between what I'm feeling and what is true. And the longer I live, the longer I pastor, the older I get, the more I think this is like one of the most essential skills of the Christian life and of a Christian leader, because we're all tempted to get drawn into how we feel. And our feelings are not always truthful. And especially in this, in the weird time we've been through the last 2 years, we've all had a wide array of emotions, and we've probably we've probably just traversed the entire emotional spectrum. But David, in the presence of God, differentiating, here's my experience. God, I don't know what to do with this, so I'm bringing it to you, and I'm opening up to you raw and honest. And God, I'm deliberately choosing to put my trust, my hope in you, and waiting. So real quick, look at this. I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. I will keep my mouth with a bridle while the wicked is before me. I was done with silence. I held my peace from even good. My sorrow was stirred. My heart was hot while I was musing, the fire burned. So the first 3 verses, David says, I'm going through such a hard time. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I realize I'm vulnerable. I might do the wrong thing. If someone hears me say the wrong thing, it'll hurt the testimony of God. So I'm just going to shut up. I'm done with silence. It was not a good decision, okay? Because he says the sorrow was stirred. His darkness increased. His heart was hot. It began to boil up within him. While I was musing, the fire burned. I've heard that presented in a positive context. Maybe it can be, but David means it negatively. This is boiling in him. It's seething within him. He's trying to just work through it himself alone, but he can't. He doesn't want to vent it. That would destroy his testimony and God's. But he finally has to speak. So how does he speak? He speaks to God. Verse 4, Lord. Now here it is. Look at this next phrase. Make me to know. Now, he talks about life, make me to know the length of my life, the brevity of my life, how frail I am, how weak I am. Seems like my life is about as long as my hand breadth. My age seems like nothing. Every man at his best state is vanity. Every man walks in a vain show, verse 6. They're disquieted, unsettled, noisy lifestyles in vain. He heapeth up riches and knoweth not who shall gather them. So David says to God, God, it seems like my life is pointless. My life is vain. My life is purposeless. There's no meaning to it all. It's all a show. It's all about externals. Okay. He pours that all out to God. Why does he do that, guys? Well, because number one, that's how he really feels. But number two, it's not true. Okay. That's what you got to see here. These things are not true in the sense of vanity. Yeah, life is brief and we're weak, but life is meaningful and purposeful and missional and valuable, right? So go back to verse 4, the very first prayer, he says, Lord, make me to know. Hebrew language is very conceptual, and it's hard to get one word that means the full meaning, okay? But the prayer here is, God, correct my perspective. Give me a different view. Open up my understanding. Let me see what's going on with me. Let me understand my weakness in contrast to your strength, the brevity of my life in contrast to your purpose and mission, and the value of my life. God, David is saying, God, lift me up out of this sunken darkness at my core and clarify my perspective. I'm just going to skip down to where he says, verse 7. Look at verse 7. And now, Lord, what wait I for? Now, let me quickly exclamation point this, and then I want to shift to motives. When your core is not healthy or not flourishing with joy, when you've come into a darkness of soul kind of time, if it's because of neglect and poor motives, that requires a different diagnostic. But maybe it's just because God's bringing you, like David, through a hard time, through a time of suffering. Either way, David realizes, and by verse 7, David has a new sense. This is short-lived. I'm going to wait. I'm going to get through it. Okay. I am going to wait. My hope is in thee. First word of verse 8, deliver. He's already got, 3 verses ago, he said, life is useless. It's futile. It's totally vain. Now he's saying, I got a reason to wait. I got a reason to hope. I got a reason to expect deliverance. So already his core is coming to a different place. Why? Because he went to God, he laid out his heart, and he took an objective view of it. Here's how I'm feeling up against who my God is, what his truth is. And so now I'm going to wait. Now, my experience, guys, is cultivating the core doesn't always mean I immediately, it's not like I took a pill, suddenly I'm happy again. It's not like I took a pill and suddenly the winter's gone and happy days are here again, and I'm out of the depression or the darkness or the burden. It's not like I take a happy pill and all of a sudden the church grows by 200. Okay. No, this is holding on to truth, no matter how I feel, knowing that eventually God's going to bring me back to health. He's going to restore me. Isaiah 40. He's going to renew my strength. Okay. So cultivating the core is, in my opinion, it's the most important thing you do, because out of that flows everything else. And you bring that core to everything else you do. And everybody is drawing from that as sort of the wellspring. Okay. So if you're not healthy, yeah, you could still speak the word of God and God can still use that, but it's a totally different dynamic than if you're speaking out of sincerity and authenticity. All right, now very quickly, and I gotta shut up. Why does this connect to our motives? All right. Motivationally, well, motives can create emotions. Okay. Motives can create destinations and outcomes that produce joy or discouragement or despair. Not always, but sometimes my discouragement in ministry was that I started with the wrong motive. And I drove through looking for a particular outcome that I didn't get. And so the motive led to serving or doing out of the wrong motive, which led to the outcome I didn't want or didn't expect, which then rebounds back on my emotions. I'm either a failure or a loser, or I scroll Facebook or Twitter on Monday and find out everybody else had a better day than I did, or, all that mind game. Okay. So Patrick Lencioni wrote a book a couple years ago. It's a very short book. Anybody read Lencioni? Wave at me if you've read Patrick Lencioni. Really, he's a secular, I think he's evangelical Catholic, but more of a business author. But this is, every ministry leader needs to read this book. It's called The Motive. Anybody read it? Wave at me. Oh, wow. Good. Okay. It's very short. It's a parable. So it's actually almost like reading fiction. The Motive. He uses the illustration of a CEO. So in your own mind, you kind of got to translate it to pastor, right? We're not CEOs corporately, but we are senior leaders. And he said, here's kind of the premise of the book. He said, lots of people want to be CEOs, but very few people want to do what CEOs do. And then he unpacks it and he says, people that want to be CEOs, they want to make more money. They want to have, autonomy. They want to drive nice cars. They want the perks of being CEO. Okay. And he uses the word rewards. So if you're taking notes, write down maybe on a line, on one side of the line, rewards. Reward-based leadership is leadership that is motivated by what I get from leading. Okay. Now, we can spiritualize this. And I'm leading because I want the rewards of the crowns of heaven, which, I'm not going to keep those very long, right? I'm just going to throw those at the feet of Jesus. I want the rewards of a growing church and people that love me and call me pastor. I'm telling you guys, this is insidious and it can sneak up on us and it's in us more than we know. Okay. Often we want what we want in ministry for no single pure reason, but for a tangled blob of reasons. Okay. We all want good things in ministry. We want people to be saved and baptized, disciples made. We want the church to grow and be healthy. And part of our will, part of our motives, we want Christ to be glorified, the word to go forth, the gospel to advance, the kingdom to be built. And those are pure motives. But if we're honest, part of us wants affirmation. Part of us wants to feel successful. We want to feel like we're doing something great for God. We want to see the fruit of our labor. And not even, okay, and even that phrase, fruit of our labor. Paul wanted to see fruit for his labor. There's nothing wrong with wanting to see fruit. But often the simple motive of obeying Jesus becomes one of the weakest in our hearts. Okay. And we set ourselves up for depression, discouragement, a sense of loss and feelings of loss. Because if I came to Emmanuel with a pre-constructed script that Emmanuel has got to be what I want it to be, so I can feel good about being a pastor, so you fill in the blank. What I'm going to do is be driven by a motive that's self-gratifying, okay? Mostly self-gratifying. And I'm going to be exploiting the church, the people, the giving, the going, the serving, exploiting all that for what I get out of it, okay? And if it doesn't become what I want it or need it or demand it to become, then I'm going to get angry at it. People aren't giving enough. They're not faithful enough. They're not coming enough. And I'm getting angry at them. Why? Because they're not making me feel like I want to feel. They're not making me the success that I want to be. And it's like my motives have a stranglehold on the ministry. And I'm demanding that the church make me feel valid and important and achieved and significant. The problem is, in that picture, I don't want to do what a senior pastor does. I just want to be a senior pastor. So I'll feel a certain way. Okay. Well, when you go to Lencioni's model, there's two motives in leadership: reward-based leadership, and the other one is responsibility-based leadership. So that's the other line. Okay. Reward-based or responsibility-based. So ask yourself this question: do I want to be a senior pastor, or do I want to do what senior pastors do? Because senior pastors care about people. They expend themselves. They're up late. They study a lot. It's a life of giving. It's not a life of receiving from the church. That's a byproduct. It's not a life of feeling a certain way. More often than not, I would guess we feel like we're failing more than we're winning. Most of us. Okay. But the answer at the end of the day is not how do I feel? Okay. That's a bad motive. If I'm just trying to feel a certain way, that's a bad motive. I'm using people and ministry to create a feeling. The answer at the end of the day is, has God called me to shepherd? And am I functioning as a shepherd? Am I loving people? And at the core of that is, am I obeying Jesus? Now, guys, think about it. Philip obeyed Jesus to go to Samaria, and he had a mega church in Samaria, massive revival. Jeremiah obeyed Jesus to preach to a bunch of people that didn't listen to him. And at the end of his life, he would have felt like an abject failure as he sat in a grotto writing Lamentations as his city burned. So, so much for the church growth model. So much for feeling good about yourself. But Jeremiah obeyed Jesus. Jeremiah was as much a success as Philip in Samaria, or Paul in Philippi. The call was to obey. And in one sense, you have a revival. In another sense, you have rejection. People don't even listen. So it came down to me, and this is my closing illustration. When I came to Emmanuel, there was the real possibility that that the church would not go forward, that it would die, and that I would get tagged with the death. Like Carrie went there and it died. Okay. And I took a long walk one day because I had no clue what to do. And I was in so far over my head that it was overwhelming. And I said, God, if you brought me here to go through a time of suffering and this church dies under my leadership, I surrender to that. If that's what your call was. If you want the church to grow, then grow it. If you want the church to dissolve and somehow me and my family start over, then do that. Either way, I'm here in obedience to you and nothing else. And I'm here to preach the gospel and nothing else. And God had to break me of any deeper or less pure motives because I didn't want to be set up for disappointment and for failure. Now, God surprised me and he did a different work, and I'm thankful for that. But guys, at the end of the day, if obedience is my core motive, then all it takes for me to feel successful and fulfilled and joyful is knowing in my conscience that I've obeyed. And then I'm not strangleholding my church to make me feel a certain way, which means I'm leading them selflessly, which allows them to flourish. So that's a little bit about how your core can be impacted by impure motives. So on one hand, we talked about cultivating your personal walk, your health, your flourishing. Another hand, asking yourself, what's really driving me? And we can unpack that in the discussion questions, but that's the end of my part.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I felt like it was so devotional, but practical and helpful. And I appreciate that, Brother Schmidt. What I want to do now is we're going to open it up to just some Q&A with Pastor Schmidt. If you've got a question about something he said in his talk, and you want to just unmute yourself, ask away, instead of breaking out into the rooms and doing moderation, since we've got him today for the next few minutes, anybody want to jump out with a question? If not, we can go to some of these discussion questions and talk through, but is there a question out there you guys want to ask while we've got him?
You got to call me Carrie, by the way. Brother Schmidt died.
Yes, sir.
And stop calling me sir. I just feel so old.
Anyone want to start
Everybody's
us off with discussion today?
I'll start off. This question is for Dr. Reverend Schmidt.
Yeah.
My question really is to do with motive. How do you go ahead and how do you analyze what your motive is? How do you not fall into a trap? I've done this a couple of times where I fall into a pit of circular, what is my motive? What is my motive? Am I doing this for the wrong reason? Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever been there?
Yes. First thing I would say is all of us have mixed motives. Okay. We all do, guys. And the heart is deceitful. That's, who can know it? You don't know your heart. I don't know my heart as well as I think I do. Okay. So it really becomes circular to try to figure it out for yourself. Okay. A wise prayer to pray is, Lord, help purge my motives. Okay. Show me, and reveal to me if my motives need to be maturing. Okay. And in what way? But, I'll tell you, one of the most revealing, God gives us warning lights on the dashboard of our souls. Okay. And here's your warning light. When you don't When you obeyed the Lord, and you know you obeyed, but the outcome or results were not what you expected, and you're upset about it, there you go. Warning light. Okay. Motives are wrong. All right. Let me tell you another one. I saw a pastor post not long ago that on Sunday morning he walked in and he instantly got ticked off at who wasn't there in the room. And I thought, that is a betrayal of motives, because what you're saying is everybody ought to be here to keep me from getting ticked off. Because my spirit, I'm like, Lord, let me walk into the room and be elated with joy over who's sitting in the room. Now, if you want to be a shepherdly concern for somebody that's not in the room, I get it. If you want to be, I love those people, I miss the ones that are not here, I get it. But if your assumption is they're all sitting home eating Cheetos watching football, that's just jerkiness. Maybe they're sick, maybe they've got burdens, maybe they had a tragedy. I mean, maybe there's 10 million different kinds of burdens that kept them away from church. So impure motives are self-serving. Okay, they're self-serving. Why isn't everybody here? You know, I want to feel better with a good attendance. You know, so anytime you're getting upset, the God's people aren't performing up to your standard, and we're all tempted to this, then we're playing the Pharisee. Okay, and we view them as needing to perform to create feelings of accomplishment and a sense of, you know, success in our lives. So the best test for me is, did I obey and was I happy with the results? If I obeyed and I'm not happy with the results, then my motives were messed up. So let's take Easter. Like, you have a goal of what you like to see on Easter. Okay. Maybe you'll see it, maybe you won't. But if your goal is to obey, to magnify Jesus, to worship Jesus, to preach the gospel, to bless your church family, to reach anybody that God brings to you, then you obey fully and you can celebrate whatever results and outcomes God gives, because your obedience was pure. The results are his. So that's my best thought about analyzing your motives.
Hey, Carrie, how do we set goals then? You know, I've got good friends that set numbers goals in their ministries. And, you know, my first thought isn't, and I think they're just doing that for themselves. How can we set goals?
That's a good question.
Without them being selfish or self-motivated.
Yeah.
Because I want to see our church grow.
Yeah.
I want to have a great Easter.
Yes.
So how do we keep that focus moving forward without saying, well, God's going to do it, so we can just sit back and do nothing and let God do it all?
So setting a goal, nothing wrong with that. You just don't tie your heart to the goal. And you don't tie your people's sense of success to the goal. So wouldn't it be great if we had 500 people here for Easter? Well, if you press that too hard and you define it too rigid, you have 498. Let's say you normally have 300. You have 498 people, no one's happy. We almost got it, right? But good night, you had 498 people. Like, you had 198 more than you used to have. So goals can be fickle mistress, you know? I mean, they're good, they're fine. I set goals all the time. I've never set an attendance goal for our church. I've set outreach goals, you know, I've set excellence goals. I want to have the best service we can have. I've set enlistment goals of people we want to see on teams and serving. And I've set goals on how we want the property look and how much we want to invest. You know, strategic goals. I've never set outcome goals. Okay. We have a vision offering. I don't say we have to have $1 million. I say, let's do our best and see how God will provide. He knows the need. But why am I, now this is just me, why am I careful about that? Because again, I don't want to raise, if the goal is $500,000 and we raise 400, everyone's disappointed, you know? and everybody in the room gave their best, that should be huge celebration. So I set goals that are probably not outcome based. And then we celebrate whatever the outcome of our obedience as unto the Lord. That said, I think that it's healthy to want your church to grow. The deeper question is, why do you want it to grow? Okay. Why do I want more people here? Is it so I will feel more valid? That's an impure motive. Is it because the kingdom of Christ is growing? That's a pure motive. And I think, to go back to Josh's question too, just asking yourself, do I want this because of the rewards, or do I want the responsibility? That's a motive purifying question. Here's another way to analyze that. Am I living in the title, or am I executing the responsibility? Am I doing what? That's what Lencioni brings out in the book. He lists 5 responsibilities of senior leaders. And he says, if you're avoiding any of these 5 responsibilities, you are a rewards-based leader, and you're not a responsibility-based leader. So the book will help to kind of drive at those things too. But I appreciate your question, Jeremy. That's a good question.
I have a question. Could you describe the difference as an example of an outcome goal versus a strategic goal?
Yeah. An outcome goal, Akeem, is, we want 25 people to be saved this Sunday. We want $100,000 raised in the offering. We want 200 people in church. That's an outcome goal. Okay. A strategic, like, developmental goal or directional goal would be, we want to get the gospel to 200,000 homes in our region, inviting people to Easter Sunday. Pastor Chappell used to call these work goals. Okay. Just the lead up goals. We want our facility, we want to fix these 5 things in our building. We want to steam clean the carpets, and we want to plant flowers on the outside. These are good lead up goals. We want the service to be this long, to involve these components. We want to involve 10 more people in children's ministry for Easter. We want to get 10 more people onto children's ministry teams. That's a process goal, engagement goal. Okay. So if the goal is simply, I want this outcome, I want this result, often you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, because it's really this careful strategic thinking and prayer that would even realize that goal. But man, here's why, to drive it home a little bit. I'm not saying an outcome goal is evil. I'm saying it's a real flimsy formula for potential disappointment. Because if you don't hit the outcome goal, your church could hit it out of the park. People loving, people outreaching, people blessing, people serving. They could just celebrate coming into Easter, total engagement. And if you don't hit your attendance goal, you and everybody else will be disappointed. But if the pressure on the attendance was off, and it's just like, let's have the best outreach, the best Easter Sunday we can have, and everybody enjoy it, then you can celebrate whatever the results. So I just think he's the Lord of the harvest. Let him handle the harvest, and let's focus on laboring in the harvest. Every one of us serves in a different city, guys. Every one of us has a different population center, different number of churches around our church. There's so many different factors, but we all came from a world where, like, everybody compared their church to everybody else's church. It's just not fair. It's wrong. Where you are, 5 guests on Easter might just be mind-blowing success. And then where you are, 100 guests on Easter might be the bare minimum expectation. And it would be so devastating for the guy that has 5 guests to get on Facebook on Monday and go, oh, Jeremy had 100 guests. Man, I'm a loser. When that Monday should be a celebration of 5 guests. Good night. So You serve in your unique context, and Jesus wants you to celebrate what he's doing in your context, not compare it to somebody else's or to your own expectations.
Hey, Carrie, one more question since it's quiet.
Yep.
You talked a lot about you and the Lord revealing these things to you. What is your accountability with other friends, maybe your wife even, or your staff, that helps
Yeah.
accountability in your own heart? As you're speaking, they can say, what is your motive of that? Do you have that accountability within your staff, your wife, fellow
Yeah,
members?
and I raise it often. I mean, this to me is like an ever-present thing because a lot of my high school and college life was immersed in a style of ministry that was just so pep rally, promotion, results based, that everybody's identity and soul definition was strictly tied up into the rate of growth and the numbers. I mean, to the point that you're making stuff up. Like, you look at a room of people, 200 people, and you go, it looks like 1,000 to me. We had 1,000, just like irrationality, just to, the echo chamber of comparison. So I'm just kind of scared of this, and I'm scared of it for my own heart, because you're never, when you get on this track, you're never happy. Okay. If you're a church planner and you got 20, you want 30. And if you got 30, you want 60. And if you got 60, it's still not enough. And if you're not enough with 60, you got to have 100. Then you got to have 200. Then you got to have 300. Then you got 400. And there's no end. There's no end. The human ego is insatiable. Now, I understand we should want the kingdom to grow. But if when you get on this motivational track, you start using people to find fulfillment, and it only goes to a bad place. So yeah, any of my family, our staff, we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. What is our motive? What are we really after? I'll tell you another reason I'm scared of this. I don't want to treat my staff poorly. And if it's all about my outcome goals, I will drive them right into the ground, and they'll end up hating me or struggling with resentment, one of the two.
That's good. Any other questions you guys have got?
I have
Hey,
a question
Carrie,
as it relates. Oh, never mind.
I
Two guys.
didn't have a question. I just want to say thanks for breaking down these false walls for all of us. For so long, as you said, this has been built into us. And I just appreciate you taking the wrecking ball of God's word and knocking it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. You guys are fighting some hard battles, and this is not an easy day to be a pastor. A lot of guys are stepping away from it. And if you can dial in to the power and the beauty of the gospel and the awesome privilege it is to share the gospel with one person, okay? And if you just stay there, no matter how big the ministry gets or where it goes or how God leads you, if you could just continue to have the heart of Philip going to Gaza to win one Ethiopian to Christ, God will build what he wants to build on top of that. But obedience has got to be your core fulfillment. And that's a healthy place to go, and it's sustainable as well. Was there somebody else that we cut off a little while ago that had a question?
That was me, because I feel like I'm always supposed to jump in and say something. But I do actually have a question. First of all, I can validate that concept of never feeling like that next stage and that next goal. And when I accomplish it, what will I feel? And when I won't say that I've arrived at this. I'm a work in progress, because it seems like every month when I do accomplish something or don't accomplish something, it's still a battle for me. But at every level, you're like, do I feel satisfied? And there's when I'm walking with Christ, there's a satisfaction that I'm with him. And when I'm focused on the goal, there's never a satisfaction. It never feels full. Like after you eat a meal, you never feel like, oh, never. And if you do feel it, it's like for 30 minutes. And then it's
Yes.
like, where's the next? And so I totally, I guess my question is, it relates to dealing with staff. So how do you go about establishing and teaching? You want them to feel a sense of accomplishment and that they're doing their job. Bluntly, some people are just really bad at doing stuff, and other people are really good at doing stuff. And Jesus loves both of those people equally. He loves the person who accomplishes goals, and he also loves the person that is, not a team player, right? Not actually getting things done. So how do you go to the person who is maybe not motivated and is not accomplishing things, but also letting them know they're loved by Christ and they're loved by everybody, and also if they don't do their job, they're not going to work here anymore? How do you do that without becoming what we despise? What would you say to that?
Well, there's a bigger picture, and that is that you're the shepherd of the whole church. And the scenario you're explaining to me, Josh, is of a person exploiting the church. So this person is absorbing a paycheck, people who are generously tithing and giving faithfully, working hard, generously giving, so that this unmotivated, undisciplined, lazy person can float through life. So I love that person, yes, too much to not confront them, by the way, okay? Because it's not good for them to be floated that way. But I also love the whole church who's making the investment. So this falls on me as a leader. It has nothing to do with outcome goals, performance goals, metrics. It has everything to do with stewardship. As a faithful minister of the gifts of God's people, I'm going to make sure they're served well. That means I'm going to hire motivated, disciplined, devoted, passionate people who are going to give this church family the ministry they deserve, and that they're frankly investing to receive. Now, I realize I don't want to get too corporate. They're not paying for that. But in a very pragmatic, flat view of this, our church family is paying our staff fairly, reasonably, generously, consistently to serve well and to be in the ministry. And that's a huge privilege. So because I love the church, because I have a stewardship as the leader, I cannot let someone betray that investment. So that's the grounds on which I address the performance. It's really a character problem that you're talking about, and I address it at that level. If it's not a character problem, then maybe it's competence and I need to train them. If it's not character or competence, then it's just core gifting. I've probably got them in the wrong role. And maybe this just isn't the right fit for them. Is there another position in the ministry? And if not, maybe in another line of work. It doesn't have to be personal, and it doesn't have to strictly be top-down, performance-driven, do your job or you're going to lose your job. You got to pull back and have a bigger biblical view that we're engaged in a work, and if you're called, then have the character and develop the competence, and let's get you fit to your core gifts. Those are, hey, it's all alliterated: calling, character, competence, core gifting. And if this person's not operating well, it's one of those four things, and I'm going to sit down and diagnose which one. And if it's character, then the church is not going to be able to continue investing in that person if it can't be resolved.
That's good. Hey, I want to go to James. James, you got your hand raised. Go ahead and share your question. James, are you unmuted?
No, I'm not. Now I am. Yeah, I forgot to lower my hand. I think he answered my questions. It was an offshoot of Josh's question. A lot of us like the type A personality. I'm not type A myself, and then we think everyone in ministry has to be type A, goal-oriented to get things done, but not everyone's that way. So how do we distinguish between someone who's just type A, goal-oriented, and someone who's not, and to be honest, doesn't work well with specific goals?
I have a hard time believing that anybody couldn't work with goals. I personally think everybody should function according to goals. Okay. And I think a type A person, maybe I've got some type A qualities. I think a type A person has to recognize their propensity to be driven by wrong motives. I mean, type A people gravitate to this in a way that others may not so much. So I would expect all of my staff to have goals, no matter what their personality type. The type A components of me, I try to restrain them, because honestly, let's be honest, guys, type A people think they're smarter than God. Like, I'm going to kill it for God. He needs me. Like, that's why he put me here. I'm going to do something great for God. I got this. Like, here's my strategic plan for Easter. I've got this. If you want to show up, you can. But if you don't show up, God, I've still got my strategic plan. That's how type A people kind of operate. All right. So that's why I say restraining. My type A tendencies will get out in front of God if they have their way. So I have no problem expecting people to live by goals. I think it's just the nature of those goals. What are they? Like what kind of goals are they? And why are those my goals? What am I hoping my goals will produce? And is it selfish? Is it reward-based goals? Or is it responsibility-based goals? All right. Simple illustration. Are you getting an advanced degree so you can make more money? Skate through your classes, trim your just skate through so you get a degree, so you can say you've got a degree so you can have more money, higher pay scale. Or are you pursuing an advanced degree because you want to be more effective and you want to read the books and do the work and learn the materials so that you are a better, more thoroughly equipped servant of God? That's what we talk about, reward or responsibility based. I have no problem with goals. I don't think it's healthy to idolize those goals or to be defined or to tie my heart to those goals.
That's good. David, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, in our church, we have been focusing a lot lately on celebrating wins. And so when not looking for the result as such, how do you practically celebrate when you don't have the number tied to it?
Oh my goodness. Well, anytime anybody gets saved, that's a huge win. Anytime anybody shows up at your church, that's a huge win. Anytime anybody serves in ministry, that's a big win. So if I say to my church, we want to have 1,500 people on Easter, I'm just setting them up for, number one, to think this is the definition of success, 1,500 people. If we hit it, we're good. If we don't hit it, we failed. I don't want them thinking that way at all. Okay. I want to celebrate the win. Okay. And a really good, simple answer to David's question is clarify a different win. Okay. If the only win is numbers, if the only win is attendance numbers, offering numbers, we need a different win. Okay. Because there are better wins that actually still lead to growth, numbers, results, but they get there differently. It's a different path to a more healthy destination. It's possible to be motivated by numbers, but that's a weaker motivation than to be motivated by mission, motivated by gospel, motivated by biblical realities, motivated by obedience. And then with the idea that I'm going to celebrate whatever God does, whatever God does.
It's good. Any other questions? Maybe one more before we wrap up here. Yeah, Chris, go for it.
I wouldn't mind maybe just a brief thing on maybe how to do I know it's developing our own personal core, but how do you maybe recognize it and help encourage it in others, like via staff, via other pastors and friends?
I'll just talk personally about this for a minute. I'm generally an optimistic, hopeful, forward-looking person who believes the best of everybody, comes into Sunday ready to celebrate, ready to worship. And that is the product of the realities of the gospel and the truth of God. Okay. When you read the Bible, it's good news. I mean, I get it. There's some negative diagnostics there. You know, the world's fallen, we're sinful, you know, we're made out of flesh, all that kind of stuff. But the big picture is, man, we're where God wants us. I belong to God. He loves me. I can't lose his love. There's hope always. And so for me, knowing that my core is not doing well would be to realize that flourishing and that joy and that optimism and that sense of joy in obeying, okay, the Lord is diminishing in some way. And there's a lot of reasons that can happen. This is the hard part of this, guys. It's not hard to know it's happening. You just get a bad attitude. You know, like you're cynical, everything seems stupid. Nobody wants to come to church. You know, your whole message was dumb. You know, you just don't even want to get out of bed on these days. And you if you have a staff, you want to go in a staff meeting grumpy, and you're sure they're all lazy and they're all, you know, not doing their job right. And, you know, everything's negative and you're cynical. Well, that problem is in me. Okay. That's in me. Learning to recognize it is step one. Learning to diagnose it is so hard. What happens, guys, is we feel it so imminently, so presently, it just possesses us. The feelings take over. We just feel depressed. So we are. And we don't stop and like you can take a ball cap off and look at it. We don't like have an out-of-body experience and look at our depression and look at our dark soul feelings or thoughts. That is what David does in the Psalms all the time. And then as though you could, you know, disembody those feelings, take them to God, almost like you would take your body to a surgical center, you know, and have work done. You know, you lay it out to God and you say, God, this is how I'm thinking and feeling. And then the diagnostic for me, sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's physical sickness, illness, sometimes it's total depletion or exhaustion. Sometimes it's a steady stream of negative things, critics, problems, counseling, trials. Sometimes it's just, I'm just expended, okay? You know, it's kind of like a little child that's throwing a fit. Is the child throwing a fit because he's hungry? Is the child throwing a fit because his dad has neglected him for the last month? Or is the child throwing a fit because he needs a nap? Or because he's just a belligerent child, strong-willed, you know? And every one of those needs different treatment, right? If he's tired, put him down to sleep. You spank a tired child, you get nothing but a worse situation. So if you are depleted emotionally and spiritually, and, you know, your cure for that is, I'm going down the wrong road, but diagnosing it and then, Lord, show me the road back and waiting on him. But sometimes it's real simple. Sometimes it's like sleep in, you know, go away with your wife. Sometimes it's get around positive people that can tell you the good things they see, you know, get a different perspective. But for me, the struggle is first in differentiating, diagnosing, going, okay, wait a minute, this isn't reality. This is just how I feel. And then getting with God and analyzing the contributors. And that's very hard work. All I know is sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong, but always God brings me through. Eventually the waiting game is over and he refreshes my soul. So sometimes it's just waiting it out.
That's good. I appreciate Carrie sharing with us today. That is so hard to call you that, but I appreciate you sharing with us today and just giving of yourself, spending time with us, investing into each and every one of us with this thought. I want to give a couple closing announcements before we wrap up here. Next week, we'll be right back here, same time, same place. The topic is the secret strength of multiple personalities. Our very own Kylie Dulo is going to be sharing with us next week. The new job board has been posted. So if you guys want, you can check that out. If you've got something you want to submit, you can send those to Kylie as well to get those on there. Special thanks to Kerry Schmidt for leading our talk today. Really appreciate that. We have him every chance we get, and I'll be getting with him to have him back with us again. But thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Anytime. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate all you guys. Stay in the battle. Have a good Easter.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks. Great conversation today. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Have a great week thinking outside the box. Take care, guys. Have a good week.
See ya.